To these was joined a public prosecutor, Fouquier Tinville, afterward attained to a sombre fame in this position. 6 members of the Convention were to sit as a commission to supervise drawing the indictments, the preparation of evidence, and also to advise the prosecutor. The punishments under the limitations of the penal code and other criminal laws were to be within the discretion of the court, whose judgments were to be final. Death was accompanied by confiscation of property. Considering that this was an extraordinary tribunal, working under extreme tension, which tried persons against whom usually the evidence was pretty conclusive, its record for the first 6 months was not discreditable. Between April 6 and September 21, 1793, it rendered 63 sentences of death, 13 of transportation, and 38 acquittals. The trials were held patiently, testimony was heard, and the juries duly deliberated. Nevertheless, the terror deepened as the stress upon the new born republic increased. Nothing more awful can be imagined than the ordeal which France endured between the meeting of the Convention in September 1792 and the completion of the Committee of Public Safety in August 1793. Hemmed in by enemies, the Revolution glowed in Paris like molten lava, while yet it was torn by faction. Conservative opinion was represented by the Girondists, radical opinion by the Mountain, and between the two lay the Plain, or the majority of the Convention, who embodied the social centre of gravity. As the central mass swayed, so did supremacy incline. The movement was as accurate as that of any scientific instrument for registering any strain. Dumouriez's treason in April left the northern frontier open, save for a few fortresses which still held out. When those should fall, the enemy could make a junction with the rebels in Vendée. Still the Girondists kept control and even elected Isnard, the most violent among them, president of the Convention. Then they had the temerity to arrest a member of the Commune of Paris, which was the focus of radicalism. That act precipitated the struggle for survival, and with it came the change in equilibrium. On June 2, Paris heard of the revolt of Lyons and of the massacre of the patriots. The same day the sections invaded the Convention and expelled from their seats in the Tuileries 27 Girondists. The Plain or Centre now leant toward the Mountain, and on July 10 the Committee of Public Safety, which had been first organized on April 6, 1793, directly after Dumouriez's treason, was reorganized by the addition of men like Saint Just and Couthon, with Prieur, a lawyer of ability and energy, for president. On July 12, 1793, the Austrians took Condé, and on July 28 Valenciennes, while on July 25 Kleber, starving, surrendered Mayence. Nothing now but their own inertia stood between the Allies and La Vendée. Thither indeed Kellermann's men were sent, since they had promised not to serve against the coalition for a year, but even of these a division was surrounded and cut to pieces in the disaster of Torfou. A most ferocious civil war soon raged throughout France. Caen, Bordeaux, Lyons, Marseille declared against the Convention. The whole of the northwest was drenched in blood by the Chouans. 60 departments were in arms. On August 28 the Royalists surrendered Toulon to the English, who blockaded the coasts and supplied the needs of the rebels. About Paris the people were actually starving. On July 27 Robespierre entered the Committee of Safety, Carnot on August 14. This famous committee was a council of 10, forming a pure dictatorship. On August 16 the Convention decreed the levée en masse. When Carnot became Minister of War to this dictatorship, the Republic had 479,000 demoralized soldiers with the colours, under beaten and discredited commanders. Bouillé had conspired against the States General, Lafayette against the Legislative Assembly, and Dumouriez against the Convention. 1 year from that it had a superb force, 732,000 strong, commanded by Jourdan and Pichegru, Hoche, Moreau, and Bonaparte. Above all, Carnot loved Hoche. Up to Valmy the old regular army, however shaken, had remained as a corps. Then it became merged in a mass of volunteers, and these volunteers had to be armed and disciplined and fed and led against the greatest and strongest coalition which the modern world had ever seen. France under Carnot became a vast workshop. Its most eminent scientific men taught the people how to gather saltpetre, and the government how to manufacture powder and artillery. Horses had to be obtained. Carnot was as reckless of himself as of others. He knew no rest. There was that to be done which had to be done quickly and at any cost. There was that or annihilation. On October 21, 1794, when the people had gathered in the Champ de Mars to celebrate the Festival of Victories, after the President of the Convention had proclaimed that the Republic had been delivered, Carnot pronounced what had been accomplished. France had won 27 victories, of which 8 had been pitched battles. 120 lesser combats. France had killed 80,000 enemies. Had taken 91,000 prisoners. Also 116 places or towns, 6 after siege. 230 forts or redoubts. 3,800 cannon. 70,000 muskets. 90 flags. As Benjamin Constant has observed, nothing can change the stupendous fact that the Convention found the enemy at 30 leagues from Paris, and made peace at 30 leagues from Vienna. Under the stimulus of a change in environment of mind is apt to expand with something of this resistless energy. It did so in the Reformation. It may be said almost invariably to do so when decay does not supervene, and it now concerns us to consider, in some rough way, what the cost to the sinking class of attempting repression may be, when it miscalculates its power in such an emergency. I take it to be tolerably clear that, if the French privileged classes had accepted the reforms of Turgot in good faith, and thus had spread the movement of the Revolution over a generation, there would have been no civil war and no confiscations, save confiscations of ecclesiastical property. I take it also that there would have been no massacres and no revolutionary tribunals if France in 1793 had fought foreign enemies alone, as England did in 1688. Even as it was, the courts did not grow thoroughly political until the preservation of the new type of mind came to hinge largely on the extermination of the old. Danton's first and relatively benign revolutionary tribunal, established in March 1793, was reorganized by the Committee of Public Safety in the following autumn, by a series of decrees of which the most celebrated is that of September 17, touching suspected persons. By this decree the tribunal was enlarged, so that, in the words of Danton, every day an aristocratic head might fall. The committee presented a list of judges, and the object of the law was to make the possession of a reactionary mind a capital offence. It is only in extreme exigencies that pure thinking by a single person becomes a crime. Ordinarily a crime consists of a malicious thought coupled with an overt act, but in periods of high tension the harboring of any given thought becomes criminal. Usually during civil wars, test oaths are tendered to suspected persons to discover their loyalty. For several centuries the Church habitually burned alive all those who denied the test dogma of transubstantiation, and during the worst spasm of the French Revolution to believe in the principle of monarchy, and privilege was made capital with confiscation of property. The question which the Convention had to meet was how to establish the existence of a criminal mind when nothing tangible indicated it. The old regime had tortured. To prove heresy the Church also had always used torture. The Revolution proceeded more mildly. It acted on suspicion. The process was simple. The committee, of whom in this department Robespierre was the chief, made lists of those who were to be condemned. There came to be finally almost a complete absence of forms. No evidence was necessarily heard. The accused, if inconvenient, was not allowed to speak. If there were doubt touching the probability of conviction, pressure was put upon the court.